Your Highness,
Movie.
we received. What is it?
The theme.
Hope.
Incorrect.
Okay, let me explain. In my last video, I explained how I look at theme, and in this video I'm putting my system to the test by doing an in-depth analysis with it. If you haven't watched the last one, that's fine. You should be able to understand most of this one. A few elements might make more sense if you watched the previous one, but here's a quick summary. Traditional definitions of theme are too vague, and don't help authors actually learn to communicate theme in their stories. Theme is formed by a story at the intersection of character, world, and plot, which results in different moral value systems clashing. However, there is something I missed in the last video that is essential to the system: my own definition of theme. I defined character, world, and plot, but those are each ways to express theme and not the theme itself. So here's my definition of theme. A story's theme is the moral principle it's trying to prove as true. By moral principle, I don't mean a single ideal or value. I mean a statement about how an ideal or value operates in practice. A theme does this by embodying the ideals in character, world, and plot, and letting them play out as they interact. Those interactions will reveal a truth about the morals, a moral principle. This is why I say hope is not the theme of Rogue One. Hope is an ideal or a value, not a moral principle. Rogue One is about hope, that much is true, but the theme will be found in what the story says about hope. And when you examine the characters, world, and plot of Rogue One, you find that it is about a lot more than just hope. It is a lot deeper and much richer than that. So let's dive straight in and find the theme of Rogue One. Let's start with the protagonist of the film, Jyn Erso. She has a very interesting character arc. She starts off completely disengaged from the fight, then does a complete 180 and is all in for the rebellion. Why? The answer seems to have to do with hope, as the line, "rebellions are built on hope," is very purposefully used as a mirror to show how she has changed. She starts out dismissing the idea of hope, and then becomes the one pushing for it the most. This is a great character arc, but if it stops there, it would be rather shallow and not as thematically potent. To get to the core of this arc, we have to ask why she dismissed hope, or more specifically, what core belief did she carry that caused her to dismiss hope? The answer to that question is found in her conversation with Saw. When Saw says to Jyn, "You care not for the cause," her response is, "The cause? Seriously? The Alliance, the Rebels, whatever it is you're calling yourselves these days, all it's ever brought me is pain." "You could stand," Saw asks, "to see the Imperial flag reign across the galaxy." Jyn replies, "It's not a problem if you don't look up." In this scene, Jyn dismisses the cause of the rebellion, which is built on hope, but she does it for a specific reason, because all it's ever brought her was pain. Her mother was killed and her father captured by the Empire because they tried to resist. Then, during her teenage years, she fought for the rebellion under Saw's leadership, and he abandoned her. Twice, fighting for the cause only brought her pain and suffering. So to avoid further pain, she dismisses hope itself as worthless and the cause as meaningless. In fact, she views the suffering as meaningless and avoids acknowledging it. This scene with Saw is the first time she truly expresses her pain. Initially, she tries to keep herself distant from it, like when she is asked about her father. Cassian asks how long it's been since she's seen him, and she gives a very matter-of-fact 15 years ago. Contrast this with a response to the same question regarding Saw. "It's been a long time." Her relationship with Saw is more emotionally fraught than that with her father, and the different responses reflect that. She is able to emotionally distance herself from Galen much more easily by thinking he's dead. She avoids assigning any moral value to what happened, saying that it's easier. To her, going deeper into which side of the fight he's on is a political opinion rather than a question of right and wrong. She can't consider the morality of the Empire and Rebellion because doing so would force her to confront her pain. When she says it's not a problem if you don't look up, she is avoiding the conflict and its moral components. However, despite her self-serving, independent attitude, she does know right from wrong, even displaying heroic tendencies when she runs into danger to save a child. But the rebellion is different. It's morally right, and yet it caused her pain. How can something morally right cause pain? She can't reconcile these two ideas, and avoids the entire conflict as a result. The core belief that causes her to dismiss the idea of hope was suffering has no meaning. But that changes when she sees Galen's message. He says that his life has been wasted in service to the Empire, but that his love for her drove him to turn that suffering into sacrifice, to give them a chance, to give her a chance. Galen's message shatters her entire worldview with one simple fact: Galen's suffering isn't for nothing. It isn't meaningless. He did something about it, but it doesn't stop with him. For Galen's sacrifice to be worth it, for her own suffering to mean something, she has to carry the torch Galen is passing, and she accepts it. She has been shown that her core belief was a lie, and she must embrace the truth instead. She takes her first steps toward embracing the truth in her conversation with Bodhi. Just like Galen, Bodhi thinks his life has been wasted in service to the Empire, but Galen told him that he could move forward and do something about it, the same way he did. When Bodhi says it was too late, Jin refuses to believe it. With her newfound sense of purpose, she insists that they can do something about it. She is embracing the truth, but then her commitment to the truth is challenged. Galen is killed, and it's the rebellion's fault. As Cassian says, she's looking for someone to blame for her pain, and just like before, she blames the rebellion. And rightfully so. The rebellion's insistence on killing Galen is what led to his death. Those were alliance bombs that killed him. Jin calls it out, and she's right. When she says you might as well be a stormtrooper, she's falling back into her old mindset. The rebellion, the empire, both sides of the same coin causing pain and suffering. The question is, can she move past her pain and do the right thing, even if it means working with the ones who caused that pain? Can she be more than her pain? And that is the question Cassian forces her to ask herself. What do you know? Cassian demands. We don't all have the luxury of deciding when and where we want to care about something. Suddenly the rebellion is real for you. Some of us live it. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. You're not the only one who lost everything. Some of us just decided to do something about it. This scene is an excellent example of plot at work. Her father's message and death both force her to examine her beliefs more closely. They push her to make thematic choices. She began believing in hope when she saw the message, and now that new belief has been shaken, but she chooses to hold on to it anyway. In her speech to the members of Rogue One, she expresses this truth. Saw Gerrera used to say, "One fighter with a sharp stick and nothing left to lose can take the day. If we can make it to the ground, we'll take the next chance. And the next, on and on until we win, or the chances are spent." She takes her pain and does something with it, reintegrating her past with Saw into her current fight, and declares that no matter what happens, no matter what pain and suffering is inflicted, they will move forward and do the right thing. Because as long as they do that, their pain and suffering will mean something. That is the first major building block of Rogue One's theme. Hope means pushing through suffering to do the right thing. But it doesn't stop there, because there are other character arcs that expand the theme. The other primary character in Rogue One is Cassian Andor. Cassian has suffered just like Jin has. As he told her, "You're not the only one who lost everything." But how does he deal with that suffering? He threw everything he had into a cause, a good end, but he lost sight of his moral compass on the way. He causes suffering and pain in the name of the greater good, and told himself that the end justified the means. As he says, both himself and others have done terrible things for the rebellion, walked away from things that weighed them down with guilt that they wanted to forget, all for the cause. Some might say that Cassian is a morally gray character, that we as an audience are supposed to watch him and think the lines between good and bad are blurred. But there is a big difference between morally gray and morally complex. Morally gray says that morality isn't binary, that there isn't good and bad. But this is false. Morally complex stories acknowledge that sometimes good and bad exists in the same person, organization, or situation. But that doesn't mean there isn't a distinction between them, even if it's hard to see. The morally gray view of Cassian looks at this scene and thinks, maybe it's okay to murder people if it's for a good cause. But the film does not support this morally gray view. It acknowledges that Cassian's actions and the actions of the rebellion are sometimes straight up morally wrong. Watch Cassian's face after killing Tivik. That is the face of a man who knows he did something wrong. That is him walking away from something he'd rather forget. When he is preparing to kill Galen, he is much more short-tempered than usual. The Force moves darkly around him, and as we know from the original trilogy, the dark side of the Force symbolizes morally wrong actions. Other members of the rebellion also reflect this moral complexity. Draven, the man who tells Cassian to kill Galen, is there as a static character who represents this side of the rebellion. In terms of the thematic triangle, he is a world character. The more extreme example is, of course, the extremist, Saw Gerrera. Saw's extreme militancy in his fight against the Empire has caused him to disregard the suffering of others, to disregard collateral damage. When Jyn saves that girl, she saves her from a battle that Saw created, knowing that civilians would be caught in the crossfire. Cassian shoots one of Saw's men because he was about to throw a grenade at stormtroopers, and Jyn would have been caught in the blast. He disregards the suffering he causes others to the extent that when Jyn meets him again, he immediately thinks they are on good terms. Saw's paranoia and refusal to work with the rest of the rebellion nearly causes Galen's message regarding the Death Star to be lost. Not only does this piece of plot point to Saw's loss of morality in the fight as a problem, but elements of his design were meant to symbolize this, demonstrating how he was closer to the dark side of the fight. As Forrest Whitaker explained, he's a cyborg, and his breathing apparatus is meant to echo Darth Vader's breathing, symbolizing how his end justifies the means philosophy has turned his path to one of darkness. Part of the thematic significance of Saw is that he lost sight of his humanity in the pursuit of a good cause. All of this moral complexity exists in the rebellion for one reason: to be overcome. This kind of moral complexity is what caused Jyn's struggle in her arc. How can something that claims to be fighting for good cause so much pain? The rebellion started falling into the idea that the end justifies the means. At the beginning of her arc, Jyn had concluded that the means invalidated the end, and that is a belief she had to overcome. Cassian's arc is about learning that the ends do not justify the means. He decides not to kill Galen, going against his orders simply because he knew they were wrong. His speech to Jyn before they go to Scarif is not about justifying the wrong he and the rebellion did. He's not saying that those actions were morally gray. He admits they were terrible. But the cause is still good, and if they abandon the cause, all they are left with is the wrong they did. But they can move forward if they take up the cause and do the right thing, if they are brave enough to listen to what's in their hearts. Jyn and Cassian's arcs are united by the core truth that if they move past their pain and do the right thing, their suffering won't be meaningless. But Cassian is not the only character in this movie who believed that inflicting suffering on others was justified if it was for a cause. Director Krennic is one of my favorite villains, and it's all because of this line. When abducting Galen, he claims that the Death Star is a way to provide peace and security to the galaxy. Galen retorts that Krennic is confusing peace with terror, and Krennic replies, "Well, you have to start somewhere." The supposed goal of oppressive regimes is to bring
peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
These things are good end goals, but it is all a lie. The Empire is founded on terror and control, not peace and security. And Krennic's line, "You have to start somewhere," shows this with such simplicity. Whereas the rebellion was dipping its toe in darkness, the Empire is the extreme of the ends justify the means mindsets. Evil is evil, regardless of what end it is for, and at its root it is always selfish, which is why Krennic's subplot is brilliant. Whereas Jyn and Cassian's plots force them to confront their views on suffering, morality, and meaning, Krennic's plot doesn't touch on these ideals in the slightest. He causes suffering to others, but his plot conflict doesn't force him to confront that. Instead, his plot is centered around his attempts to increase his power and hold on to what he already has. Krennic is obsessed with getting credit for the Death Star and being recognized by the Emperor. Until the destruction of Jedha, his conflict is centered around Grand Moff Tarkin, who doesn't believe in the Death Star's potential. However, once it is operational, Tarkin immediately takes control, and Krennic is left scrambling to regain command of the Death Star. Though he espouses his end justifies the means philosophy at the beginning of the movie, the structure of his plot reveals that even that is a facade, that his core motivations are entirely selfish. If he truly cared about the peace of the galaxy, and the Death Star was a means to that end, he shouldn't care about getting recognized for his achievements. His own power isn't the means to the end, it is the end. And as he is distracted trying to hold on to his power, the suffering he has caused rises up unseen until it is too late. He is forced to confront the consequences of his beliefs. First in Tarkin, who has the same selfish worldview as Krennic, and then in Jin, who rose up because of the suffering he created. His own beliefs cause his own destruction. One of my favorite lines in the whole movie comes right before this moment. This is the line that unlocked the theme for me, that tied it all together, that completed the triangle, and it did it by showing the function of world in this film. Cassian asks, "Do you think anybody's listening?" And Jin replies, "I do. Someone's out there." This movie leverages the fact that it's a prequel to A New Hope wonderfully, using the audience's knowledge to enhance the theme. As an audience, we know that the rebellion gets the Death Star plans and succeed in destroying it. We know that the sacrifice of Rogue One isn't for nothing, that it means something. But stop and think. How does Jin know? They have no way of knowing that the Death Star is going to be blown up, much less that the transmission of the plans gets through, that someone is listening. And yet Jin is completely confident that someone is out there. How? One might say it's because she has hope, but that's not quite right. Hope isn't defined by certainty, it's defined by desire. Rebellions are built on hope doesn't mean that rebellions are built on the certainty of a better future. It means they are built on the desire for a better future, the belief that one is possible. Jin doesn't say she hopes someone is out there, or that she wants someone to be out there. She says there is someone out there. The audience knows she's right because we have the benefit of watching the other side, and we have the other movies to confirm the results. But how does Jin confirm it for herself at that moment? This train of thought is not speculative or theoretical. The movie gives us an answer. What does Jin's mother tell her at the beginning of the film? Trust the Force. As we've discussed, the Force in Star Wars represents moral standards, right and wrong, but that isn't all there is to it. The Force stems from George Lucas's own religious beliefs, which are a blend of his Christian Methodist upbringing and the Eastern Buddhist ideas that he encountered later in life. In Rogue One, the most prominent religious idea embodied in the Force is that of a divine will. Not only does the Force represent the choice between right and wrong in how one uses it, but the Force itself is also a separate entity with a will that influences reality. As Chirrut says, he fears nothing because all is as the Force wills it. I know that we could dive deep into the rabbit hole of what is the Force and how does it work, with midichlorians and the wills spelled W-H-I-L-L, not the regular W-I-L-L that I've been using so far. And there's all sorts of other extended universe stuff, and it's all crazy, but I want to focus on the Force as it is used in this movie specifically. How this part of the world triangle fits into the theme of this story. And in Rogue One, the Force is a divine will. The need to trust in it is a subtle but major component in Jin's arc. Her mother tells her to trust in the Force and gives her the Kyber necklace, and through the character of Chirrut, Jin is reminded of the reality of the Force. When Chirrut is first introduced, it's not the Force that he points out, but the Kyber crystal. The Kyber crystal, due to its association with the Jedi, becomes a symbol of the Force in the film. Once she has committed herself to the cause of the rebellion, she also commits herself to the Force, both in word and action. She tells Rogue One, "May the Force be with us." When they go through the shield gate, there is a very real possibility that they could be refused entry and killed. But Jin pulls out the Kyber crystal. She is, in this moment, actively choosing to trust in the Force. That is why she is so certain that someone is listening. She isn't hoping for an outcome. She's trusting in the Force. She has gone from hope to something deeper. Faith. The Bible tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the proof of things unseen. Faith is certainty. It's knowing something to be true with no evidence. Someone is out there. But it doesn't work without something to have faith in. In Rogue One, that thing is the Force. And this is why, as a Christian, Rogue One is one of my favorite films. Its theme isn't about hope, the theme is about faith. The moral principle that Rogue One is trying to prove is that faith is ultimately what gives life, suffering, and right and wrong meaning. Even though they can't see it, even though they will never know for sure, they have faith that their suffering and sacrifice means something. It's never about chance, it's about choice. The choice to do the right thing, because you have faith in something outside of yourself. Faith that what you do means something. No matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Your life isn't meaningless, because someone's out there.